Welcome to Taking the High Road, a special show dedicated to the trucking industry, specifically at the confluence of recruiting, retention, and compliance. In the fourth year as the host of this show, I bring over 2 decades of industry experience, both on the carrier side as well as the vendor side. And each week I interview industry experts and thought leaders who bring their insight to the driver lifecycle as we discuss the industry's greatest challenges. I always appreciate your feedback, good or bad. Don't forget to leave a rating and a review. I'd also like to thank and highlight the show's valuable sponsors. Their dedication and commitment to the industry and to the show is greatly appreciated. If you're interested in being a sponsor of the show or joining me for an interview, please email Jeremy at takingthehigherroad.com. Now, this week, I'm joined by a great friend who's passionate about helping carriers recruit and retain better drivers, as well as helping to level the playing field, especially for the smaller fleets versus the industry Goliaths. Loris Beyer, CEO of Carrier Intelligence, who also happens to be a premier sponsor of the show. Thank you so much for joining me, Loris.
Jeremy, appreciate it, man. Been waiting for this one for a while.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to hear your story and how you made your way into the trucking industry. What was your inspiration for starting Carrier Intelligence? Perhaps you can share with the audience what Carrier Intelligence is and what you're doing that sets you apart from the myriad of other companies competing in your space. I'd also like to learn about what you're hearing from other carriers as you're out there, engaging with them, especially, around the challenging environment that we've all experienced the past couple of years. And then lastly, we'll answer a question from a listener during our deeper dive segment. Does that work for you?
Perfect, man. Let's do it.
All right. Well, as you know, I start every conversation with a book recommendation. So if you have one, I'd love for you to share maybe a book that you've read that was impactful to you.
Yeah, for sure. I'm a big reader. So I would say the most impactful book recently that I've read for myself was one called Ready, Fire, Aim. It really emphasizes the importance of, taking action, I think, and making adjustments along the way. But, that being said, Jeremy, I truthfully read to my kids probably more now than I do for myself. I got 3 of them, busy dad. And so I read to my kids every night. And there's actually a book that we do keep coming back to. It's called Oh, the Places You'll Go by none other than Dr. Seuss. I'm sure you've heard of him, but truthfully, there's a lot of parallels in that book. I think it's life is full of ups and downs. There's surprises, but it's important to keep moving forward, really past each obstacle and kind of follow your dreams. Now, thinking of it as more of a business level, I think there's a lot of parallels with folks, whether they're a solo entrepreneur or even an enterprise organization. And as you overcome obstacles, those are places that other people would have given up at. And if you conquer enough of those hurdles, success is pretty much assured. So a little different answer, but I'm sure.
Love it. We got a twofer. We got one, Ready, Fire, Aim. I've heard of it. And so that's intriguing. I've heard of it. I think it's probably on my Goodreads list of books to read. I'll review it again and see if that pushes it up closer to the top. But then the Dr. Seuss reference, I haven't gotten one of those, maybe ever. At first I was going to say some joke about like, what kind of doctor is he? I'm big on like health and wellness. But I'm very familiar with Dr. Seuss as a father of 3 myself, and congrats on that. But I would also say that sounds like some of the stuff that you described there has a lot to do with resilience too, and how you respond to some of the obstacles and that sort of thing, which is something that we all have 100% control over, how we respond, that is. So yeah, thanks for both of those. You've got an interesting background. So, and I know that you're more of an international man, I think, than most people I talk to. Can you share a bit about your background and how you made your way into the trucking industry?
Yeah, man. It's weird how stuff happens for a reason. I really do believe that. But if we kind of rewind back to university, I graduated from KU 2010, obviously coming out of a bad economy with 0809. I thought about hiding out in grad school. Quite frankly, though, I was burned out. I was completely burned out of school, and I wanted to get out. Never really traveled much in my life. I always wanted to travel. We never had the means to do a lot of big traveling. So I started exploring options as a way to maybe kind of gap that period of time until maybe economy recovered. And I started looking at working abroad. So that led me to, I remember looking at the globe, and I picked the furthest away place possible from Kansas. I'm a Kansas boy, right? And that was like Asia, other side of the world. So wound up going and living in Japan, supposed to be for 1 year, turned into 5. I got into ownership of a branch of schools over there. We had about 300 students at the peak. But that being said, it wasn't home. I really missed home. I always wanted to come back for the holidays. Those are kind of cherished times for me. And after about 5 years, I came back and I was presented an opportunity with a company called FreightQuote. They were absorbed by C.H. Robinson. So I started working as a freight broker for FreightQuote right at that C.H. Robinson merger time. And, long story short, I was a young, hungry guy. I had a now wife that came with me from Japan. She came over, had a baby on the way, and I was hungry. So I went in, I hustled and I grinded and set a bunch of company records at C.H. Robinson, working that big Kansas City central office, moved into management, branch manager level, and then really flipped over to the capacity side where we started working with trucking companies to go out and try to get them on that C.H. Robinson platform, right? And tender more loads to them. Now, what we found is at that time, years ago, carriers didn't necessarily need more loads. They needed more drivers, right? And that's why I kind of started looking at everything holistically. And I saw a big hole in the marketplace for, companies just not knowing, carriers specifically not knowing how to go out and find that most valuable asset, which is the driver. So I went all in on that and started my own company a little north of 5 years ago now. And it's been working fantastic ever since. We're 100% in the transportation space. And then about a year ago now to the date, we actually moved down to Mexico. So I'm down in Riviera Maya. It's a beautiful area. I'm kind of looking at the palm trees and everything right now, but a beautiful area, Riviera Maya. We have a big office down here. And I still travel a lot to the U.S. So
Awesome. Well, I can tell you, first of all, I look out the window too. They don't have palm trees. I guess they don't grow in Indiana, central Indiana. But being from Southern California originally, I'm a big fan, and I miss them often. But so lived in Japan, obviously, born in the United States, went to Kansas, moved to Japan, came back, and then have moved down to Mexico. Do you have dual citizenship by chance, or?
Not yet. I'm going through the permanent residency process right now. My children have my youngest is actually born down here. So our third child was actually born here. So they actually have 4 citizenships himself, and the other 2 children have 3. But I'm still American at a whole.
Well, I've got a good friend of mine, just a quick story, that was born in Mexico and then moved to Canada. He worked for Eli Lilly drug company here in Indiana, and then he became a Canadian citizen after being there for a number of years. And then he, moved to the United States. And then after probably, I don't know, he was probably here a decade or so. And then he became an American citizen. And so we always called him NAFTA, because he was literally like all 3. He was North America. I don't even know if North America has a citizenship, but if it did, he would be it. So, for you, was there any defining moment? It sounds like you're very entrepreneurial, just as it is, bottom line. But was there a particular catalyst maybe that led you to starting your own company, Carrier Intelligence, aside from the fact that you recognize that obviously the demand for drivers was a big thing?
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, I think everybody has a pivotal moment when they get into some level of entrepreneurship where there's that catalyst, that point in time. And I'm no different at all. So, love C.H. Robinson, best foundation I could possibly ask for. So nothing but great things to say about the company. That being said, dude, I was deep in the mix. Like it was a long grind. It was a big Fortune 300 company, right? And it took a toll on me. So it took a toll on me, and in reflection, it took a toll on my family. And I remember just coming home after cranking out 14-hour days and still answering emails. And we had our one child at that point, our oldest daughter, and she's my everything. She's my daughter, right? And I remember every morning I would wake up to get ready for work, kind of do kisses on the cheeks and bye. And every morning she would cry. It was a big upsetting day for every day. And one day I remember I came home stressed out from life at the office, and she had a letter written to me. And true story, she had a letter written to me. Now, she couldn't still write. She was 2 years old. But she had scribbled with a crayon, and I could tell it meant something to her. And I was like, oh, Aya, what does it say? And she was like, Dad, I wish you could work at home so we could be together more. And that was like the moment for me, right? And I remember I brought that letter to my office the next day in my cubicle. And that was really the thing that kind of had me going to do it for the family.
That's awesome. You trying to make me cry? As a fellow, my oldest daughter, same thing, man. And I love that. Those kind of stories, it's just real. And that is your everything for sure. So do you mind, sharing with the audience what Carrier Intelligence, does, and how you're able to stand out versus, so many companies. As I said, just providing, especially recruiting related products or services to the industry.
Yeah. Ultimately, so what we do, Jeremy, is we help carriers recruit and retain better qualified drivers. Big emphasis on that better qualified with what we call this D3 system. Okay. So I honestly believe it's better than anything on the market. This system is as close to 100% effective as it can be. And, you're right. This is a crowded marketplace. Lead gen companies, they're a dime a dozen. It's not hard to go run some Facebook ads or some Google ads or do some programmatic media buying. And, that's usually it. That's usually it for most companies. And typically we've seen this. It's not everyone, but I've seen it again and again where there's a lot of pop-up shops. They just kind of want your money and want to give you leads. And that's where the line is drawn. So we don't do that. If I know one thing, owners and those individuals at that C-suite level, what they really care about is hires, right? They want to know what goes in versus what comes out. And so, yeah, sure, if you need better leads and that's it, of course, we can offer you the best in the market. No questions asked. But if you actually want a predictable way to hire drivers, fill those trucks, and really scale a fleet, what we have is like nothing else out there. And that's really, I think, what makes us unique.
Well, and it's funny that you say that because you talk about quality. I think you hit the nail on the head. So often in this, I guess as long as I've been in the industry, there's been a vanity metric that I think has been out there, and it's just, the leads, the number of leads, cost per lead, how many leads do you get? And it seems like a carrier, the more leads they get, the more important they might think that they are. Even they're not even thinking about the quality of those leads or the conversion rate, to hire. Whereas as you hit the nail on the head with, it's hires. That's what matters. Good hires, but hires. You doesn't do any good to have a bunch of leads. It's a vanity metric otherwise.
That's all it is. It's never hard to go throw some Craigslist. And that's like an extreme example, but anybody go put $20 on Craigslist and get a bunch of leads. Like that's not rocket science, guys. It's a vanity metric, just like you said. And
it's a fry cook, by the way. They don't even have CDL.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
So, do you happen to have any, stats or stories that reflect, some of the maybe, I don't know, what success stories, maybe I would imagine that also probably reflects, especially with quality of leads and quality of hires, maybe lower turnover, stronger driver culture, those sorts of things. That's generally a byproduct. Any stories or stats you can share?
For sure. Yeah, totally. So I think so often you have carriers kind of scrape the bottom of the barrel to get drivers in, right? Or even if they have maybe more strict hiring processes, they still tend to lose drivers oftentimes as quick as they bring them in. It's this kind of revolving glass door. And, instead by us focusing on really attracting the right driver to begin with, that's actually interested in what the carrier has to offer, we can go in and plug and play drivers more easily. They really do fit into that mold of the culture. And that in turn leads to higher retention rates. So we've helped several carriers out, reduce their turnover. We really try to look at that 90-day period, right? I mean, if you keep them for 30 days, you keep them for 90 days, you keep them for 90 days, you keep them for a year. So we really try to focus on that 90-day as a benchmark. And, it's not uncommon at all to go in and help companies reduce their turnover by upwards of 40% or higher. But that 40%, I would say, is pretty average. Now, if you're already a company that has 50% turnover, which is slow, probably not going to get you down to 10. But the point is industry average is much higher than that. We can help out.
So I know you are sort of a fan of the everyman. I mean, I know that you care, as I shared earlier, about trying to level the playing field, help smaller fleets especially. And smaller, we could be talking, smaller in the grand scheme of things, maybe 50 to, several hundred, but it's really, especially against those larger, much larger fleets when it comes to driver recruiting, they just have unlimited marketing budgets oftentimes. And, can you share maybe how you're helping, those types of companies, or either to educate those companies, provide a better path to success when it comes to driver recruitment?
Yeah, for sure. And, it's funny to think that a 50 or 300 or 400 trucking company is small, because obviously they're the one percenters, right? But the point is you have the big Goliaths in the room that we won't name names now, but they're huge. And, there's a night and day difference between these kind of smaller companies versus those big ones out there. And it really comes down to three things. It really does. And this is what I would say every company, every carrier needs to be doing if they want to up their recruiting game and ultimately get better drivers in. I want to kind of call the first pillar being what we call disruptive marketing. Okay. And I'll do a quick parallel with this. The way I look at it is there's two ways to find drivers. Drivers are actively looking for jobs, trucking job boards, online classifieds, what have you, or drivers that are not looking for jobs, right? and going out and finding those drivers and aligning them with your company. So what we always try to do is we call that more of a disruptive manner of marketing. We're not looking for drivers or looking for jobs, because oftentimes good drivers are already working. They don't have time to go out and, bulk apply on a bunch of companies on a job board, right? So what we want to do instead is go out and find those good qualified drivers that are not looking for work. They don't know about carrier A yet, and we want to show why that's the best company to work at. Now, that's pillar one. We get into pillar two. That's going to be more of direct leads. This one's pretty common, but at the same time, there's so much of this being sold out there in the marketplace. I believe garbage in is garbage out. I personally don't believe in multi-carrier leads. And that's, I think, a thing that a lot of carriers are they don't even know it, but they're going up and they're fighting a losing battle to begin with, because they're working multi-carrier leads against their direct competitors, and it's just an uphill fight. So find a direct lead source. And then, final piece of that, I think this is really valuable. This was a big light bulb moment for me about a year ago, is not every trucking company is great at sales. And they're not supposed to be. They're not. And we got to remember that recruiting 100% is a sales process. You're taking somebody from current situation to a new desired situation. That process is a sale. And so we've seen it sometimes where carriers, maybe the recruiting force just isn't trained in sales. They could be the most knowledgeable people about the company in the industry. End of the day, though, they're not the best salespeople. So that's kind of what I would say. And then final point with that is, if you want to be a true maverick in this industry, you got to stand out. You got to be different. There are so many trucking companies right now that they just seem bland and ordinary on the surface. Now, that being said, when I go down and I visit, we see that's not the case. Every trucking company is unique. So why go out and reflect your company like that to drivers? And, that's just a big thing I try to challenge companies with and help them understand that, like, guys, you have something unique about you. You got to find drivers that want that thing. You know what I mean? So that's a long-winded answer, but hopefully.
Great stuff, though. So much to unpack there. Thank you for that, because the direct leads versus multi-carrier leads. I've been hearing a lot about that. I think that's always been I think you're right. Plenty would argue that there's a place for those multi-carrier leads, but at the same time, you're certainly, that's probably just to build a database that you can just, cultivate over a long time. If you're wanting to grow now, you need direct leads. You need people who are really interested in working for you, that are a good fit. But as you said, and I think I say this all the time too, recruiting is sales, and there are so many companies that they might be really good at lane optimization, or, they have great relationships with shippers and their equipment, all that kind of stuff, but they're just not real good when it comes to one of their most important assets, and that is converting, hiring CDL drivers. So
Yeah, you got it for sure.
yeah. So now I've seen you a number of times in person the past year or so. You're getting out to events, you're meeting people, having deep conversations. How helpful has that been, just getting in front of carriers and hearing from them, with some of their current challenges?
One word answer: invaluable, right? I wish I'd done it earlier, but again, things happen for a reason. I think timing is just something that we can't always predict. This is an old school industry. There's no sugarcoating that. The way I like working is I like catching a drink, maybe 5, shake hands, and build relationships, right? And I think nothing is more powerful than doing that, which is why you're going to be seeing a lot more of me this coming years. I'm not looking to kind of stay behind the curtain. I want to get out there and meet other folks, because end of the day, I think the real business relationships happen face to face, and that's where you got to be.
Yeah, and I'm the same way. And I learned kind of early on. I think I've been in the industry probably a little bit longer than you have, but I learned, similar to you, where you can build relationships that's so valuable, and then they last a lifetime. I've had deep relationships for now going on 20 years. It's awesome. So yeah, you'll get there. You embrace that just as I did. So anything that you've been hearing, anything good? Has anyone shared anything, like maybe that they see light at the end of the tunnel or anything like that?
You probably hear the same rumblings I hear, right? You're an educated guy. You're deep in trucking. What I think is going to happen, right, is I think we're going to still see a lot of carriers go out of business, okay? Especially the smaller ones, those owner-op types. Maybe they can't keep up with interest rates and pretty competitive truckload, rates out there. But I also think this reset is almost necessary to kind of correct that market back to the average trucker company's favor. Now, if we look at now, versus call it 12 months ago, right? Everybody that is an established fleet, we'll call it 50 trucks or more, they're feeling pretty optimistic. You know what I mean? Like it's not, oh man, it's gonna get worse and worse and worse. Like that's what people were thinking a year ago. But that being said, I think it's starting to really happen. And obviously you got an election year going on, and I assume under a new administration, right? The companies that make it through this kind of downtime right now, it'll get better sooner than later after we kind of pivot to that moment.
Yeah, well, I'd like to be hopeful as well. I'm not seeing anything to the contrary, but I'm also not seeing anything to support the optimism, except it's early in the year still. And we need to be optimistic no matter what. You prepare for the worst, hope for the best. So now it's time for the deeper dive segment where we take a question from one of our listeners. Today's deeper dive question is brought to you by Infinity Workforce Solutions. And the deeper dive question is, how can we incorporate the use of AI into our driver recruiting process? Now, before you answer that, this is certainly one of the most prevalent buzzwords, not just in the industry, but in the world, for the last probably year plus at least. So how can we incorporate the use of AI into our driver recruiting process?
I mean, I definitely don't want to pretend I'm on the forefront of that by any means, but you'd be silly not to have it on your radar, right? If we look fundamentally, I think just at how companies can put it at the micro level into their day-to-day recruiting operations. I mean, like we've done a lot with generative AI for advertising. You can do a lot of pretty unique things now with generative AI. Obviously, everybody knows ChatGPT, and sure, you can go out and plug out 10 different copies for ads and all that stuff. So those are great. And if companies don't know about those, I think those are two great places to start with. That being said, I also believe deep down, fundamentally, humans still will always prefer to work with other humans until maybe that AI is much cheaper, right? At some point, it's a simple business decision. Well, is this much cheaper to go the AI route? Then that's what we do. But, that'll happen eventually. There's no doubt it won't happen. But that being said, I still think there's an opportunist time to go out and equip, doesn't matter if it's your recruiters or different folks in your organization, go out and equip those people with AI tools to further empower them. And that's a lot what we're doing. We're able to go in and really show significant cost savings through, our strategic location in Mexico. And of course, utilizing a bunch of AI tools to help us, I would say, excel versus even what the AI tools can do now, because we still have a human driving it.
Yeah. And kind of to your point, while it is great technology to help in some, especially some basic operations, you can be more efficient and so on. Humans buy from humans. Humans work with humans. Trucking is a very people business. And so I think that's not going to change. And I don't know how much AI you could incorporate. That's not going to change. It's just going to make the process easier and maybe more efficient, but it's still, I'm hiring a CDL driver. A human is going to be doing that whole thing. It's not going away, in my opinion.
It's a typewriter versus a computer, right? Sure, like once the typewriter was washed away by the computer, I guess the typewriter repairman job is probably no longer, but how many new jobs are created because of the computer? And so I think it's the same thing with AI. It's not going to necessarily go in and annihilate all humans. I think it's just going to help us further empower and create a lot of new opportunities. And I'm really excited to see where that goes for the trucking industry as a whole.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And first of all, thank you so much for joining me, Loris. I appreciate it. And I hope to see you again at some upcoming industry events this year.
It was great, Jeremy. Appreciate it, man. We'll talk soon.
And thanks for joining me for another episode of Taking the High Road. Stay tuned for the next episode as I'm joined by Uzoma Orchingwa, co-founder of Emerge Careers, a prison to employment platform that's breaking the cycle and creating second chances for ex-offenders. Once again, special thanks to the sponsors of the show. We really appreciate you. If you're interested in being a sponsor or joining me for an interview, please email Jeremy at takingthehighroad.com. Until next time, thank you for taking the higher road.